it's Emily with Spiceworks. Thanks for tuning in today and joining us on another Spiceworks Partner webinar. 5 reasons why all data deduplication is not the same. Brought to you by Arcserve. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone this webinar is being recorded. If you have to step away for any reason, you will get an email with a link to the video in about a week. Also, there's a Q&A box on your screen to the left, and I encourage you to submit your questions at any time during the presentation. We'll get to those questions at the end via verbal Q&A, but if your question isn't addressed live, someone will be able to follow up with you. As usual, we also have a live chat, so join in by clicking the brown widget at the bottom of your screen. Now let's get started. Our presenters today are Christophe Bertrand, VP of Product Marketing, and we also have Mark Johnson, Senior Principal Consultant, on for Q&A. So Christophe, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Thank you very much, Emily. Hello, everyone. Real pleasure to be here today. We're going to talk a little bit about deduplication. There is quite a bit that has been written and said about dedupe. You may think, hey, well, you know, dedupe's been around for years and years, and it's not that new. Well, guess what? Actually, quite a bit has changed. Before we do that, I'd like to remind you of who we are, Arcserve. You may know the name from the past. You may not know us yet. So we're this very unique company. We've been in business in the data protection, backup, and recovery business for many years. We were previously a part of CA Technologies. We carved out the business and have become independent. And overnight, we became this large independent startup business that's global, focused on business continuity, disaster recovery, backup. We have a great solution, especially for virtualized environments. We actually lead the pack when it comes to recognition in the industry. We've won many awards for our virtualization solutions. When it comes to data recovery, the ability to also provide high availability. There are many, many things we do with our solution. So when you get a chance to take a look, we have a great set of products to help you really control your recovery point objectives and your recovery time objectives. We're a global business. You can see where we're located. And more importantly, we have a ton of customers. So actually, the number of UDP customers I want to talk to you about is about 20,000. So UDP is our Unified Data Protection platform. That's the platform that has this great deduplication capability that I cover amongst other ones, other technologies in the industry. We've reached 20,000 customers. We launched the product not so long ago, in 2014, May of 2014. So you can see how quickly we've picked up with this new architecture that really brings together a number of technologies. But dedupe is really the centerpiece in many ways, simply because it's become a requirement. So let me get into why you need dedupe. Some things are pretty obvious, but I think they're important to just remind ourselves of, simply because if you didn't have dedupe, and you'll see here a very simple example of, they have 20 terabytes to back up. If I didn't have dedupe or any sort of intelligence around redundant type of data, then I would end up within 4 weeks with a requirement for storage of over 80 terabytes. And that's only with a very modest growth of data and very modest percentage of change of data and a small retention type of policy. 4 weeks is not really that long when you think about it. So that's really why dedupe was invented originally. And if I go back and look at the history, and unfortunately I'm going to date myself, but I had the opportunity to launch a target dedupe solution a few years ago, a company in partnership with a company called Diligent, a great target dedupe solution. And really the problem that we were solving at the time was the fact that backups from multiple backup vendors, didn't really matter which one, it would just not complete quickly enough. So the idea was to essentially have this great solution that would take in the backup streams and figure out how to dedupe those backup streams to optimize the speed of the backup, for one thing, and also to put that data on disk in a way that would be optimized and really lower costs and operational costs. So that was great. That was a great type of technology, and this is really what it looked like when when you think about it, it was just, this idea that you'd put an appliance instead of a tape library. In many cases, there was some emulation there, and it would just figure out how to take all of that data, figure out the redundancies, filter that, and then try to shrink it on storage. So here's the thing, though. Target side dedupe has one big problem, in my view, in our modern times today, is that it's not really optimizing a lot of the flow of the data. You still have to have a backup software that sends that picks up data from the source nodes. So there's traffic there. So you're going to pick all of that up. It's going to be crunched by the backup software that does its thing, understands the metadata, figures all of these things out, and sends it off to the dedupe appliance. So you're creating a ton of traffic. And in some cases, the target deduplication does not happen inline. In some cases it does, but there are still solutions that don't do it. So what that means, and I'll cover inline versus offline, but in some cases it's faster to essentially just dump all of the data on that appliance, on the disk, and then there's going to be an offline process that will run and crunch through all of that and then reduce the actual footprint. So that's great. The result is you get a reduced footprint, but think about it. In the meantime, you've had to pay for storage for that sort of landing zone. You have to reserve a bunch of storage just so that the dedupe can take place. So that's something to really understand as you look at modern deduplication technologies, which are now source side, not target. You don't need necessarily to do that. And it saves you a lot of storage, and storage is money. And we'll cover that a little bit later. So that's target side dedupe. Essentially, you do not change your current backup workflow except for changing the destination, and that's typically a backup appliance. Again, I consider this the older way of doing things. It's been very efficient, no doubt. There are some great solutions out there, and they're doing a tremendous job, but I think there's much better that's available today. So source side is different. Source side is essentially the fact that what you're saying is I'm only going to back up stuff that I haven't backed up before, and I'm going to understand my sources and only pick up what is new at the source, and it offers a number of benefits. Number one, as you can see, once you have, say, backed up the first operating system the first time, you're going to back everything up. Okay, everything has to go from the source to your backup server to your to your data repository. Okay, that's great. The second time you see that same OS, and again, or application, it doesn't matter, or file, or just data block. If you've seen it before, you don't need it again. So you're not going to transmit it over the wire between the source node and the backup server. You are going to keep track of the fact that, yes, this source node has this OS or this block of this data, but I'm not going to physically transmit that data because I already have it in my store, and I just know that. It's kind of like DNA. I kind of know, most of our DNA is exactly the same, right, except for a few changes. Well, that's the idea. I'm just going to store the changes, and that's how I can, by the way, later provide for very advanced recovery capabilities. First benefit here is the fact that you do not transmit a lot of data for backup. If you can do full backups, which are essentially not full backups, they're really incremental forever when you think about it. Those backups will not use up a lot of bandwidth to go between the source and the backup server. Okay, so that's the first point. The other thing is, and there are some subtleties here with source side dedupe. And we'll talk about global dedupe. We'll talk about some other things you can do to also optimize storage on disk. So the beauty is that now in your storage, in your backup repository, you really have a very, very efficient solution in terms of how much consumption you need at the back end for storage. And remember, storage is money. The other advantage is also that if you do things right, with source side dedupe, you put the onus or the workload on that backup server. And then what it does is that it doesn't really bog down the source nodes, right? The first instantiations a few years ago of source-side dedupe, we're bogging down those source nodes. That's kind of counterproductive. Well, now there are technologies where you only capture those change blocks, as I explained, and you let the heavy lifting be done by the backup server layer. In addition, now that you have that repository that's optimized, you can move that around or use it for multiple recovery scenarios and for disaster recovery. And that's something I'll cover a little later. So you can see that dedupe, although it's about re-optimizing storage and optimizing the backup process, has a number of other benefits that go straight to the bottom line. Okay, so global deduplication, and really this is global source side. What that means and what that's about is the fact that you want to make sure that in the backup repository that you have, that holds all of that intelligence about all of those nodes, you can really get all of the nodes in, right? The big difference between global and other types of deduplication is you have some other ways of doing dedupe that's going to be by job or by group, but it's not global. So I'll give you a simple example. As I said, let's say you have hundreds of workstations in your environment, and you don't have to be a large company necessarily, but let's say for the sake of the argument, there are hundreds of workstations in your environment, a bunch of servers, bunch of SQL servers, bunch of email servers, you name it. Well, it turns out that you probably have a lot of commonality across the board. So unless you really back up and understand what every node has and share that dedupe across all of the nodes, you're going to end up backing up the same stuff over and over again. As I explained, once you've backed up that Windows OS, you don't need it again. You got it. It's done. So if you're highly virtualized and you've deployed many, many virtual machines, same thing. You don't have to back up every virtual machine. You just know, okay, well, there's a new VM. Great. Let's just back up whatever makes it different, the configuration files, et cetera, whatever makes it different from the previous one. But fundamentally, it's the same VM. It's the same OS. It's the same stuff. So you have to be global. Source side is great, provided, again, that the workload, the heavy lifting takes place on the server, but it has to be global. If it's not global, you're really wasting space, and you're wasting time, and you're wasting energy, right? You're wasting money. And I really mean that. The other thing is that not being global forces you to go into some complex or convoluted configurations where you may have to centralize multiple, say, backup repositories, and I'm thinking appliances here, onto one to get some level of optimization, but essentially you will not share that intelligence across your organization. I should also add one more point, which we'll cover in a minute when I talk a little bit about our solution UDP. Your backup server, the repository, has to be smart enough if it's replicated to another repository where another location where you may have other nodes to kind of share in that global dedupe. In other words, hey, I have nodes on site A and nodes on site B. Let's make sure that as we cross-protect each other, we share that dedupe across the repositories. Which is essentially the same heart, the same core repository. So that's something we'll talk about a little bit, but again, I wanted to get your attention focused on this. So source side global, that's really the way to go. That's modern dedupe. Again, target side dedupe did a fantastic job, but there are other ways to really optimize things. So a few trade-offs as you go through this. I talked about inline versus post-processing already. So inline meaning you apply the dedupe process on the fly, whether it's source side or target side. It's the same idea. But fundamentally, in order to do that, you have to have designed your dedupe engine such that it can really look up the hash tables quickly. So the way dedupe works, without getting super technical, is essentially you look at every block and calculate a unique hash number, and then you compare the hashes. That also gives you the ability to avoid any issue with hash collisions and things like that, and the issue with doing some, corrupting some of the data. But fundamentally, what you do is you go look up a table, and you have to do that very quickly to know, okay, do I have this or not? If I don't have this, I'm going to need it. This is a unique piece of data I don't have. I want it. Or, hey, I got this. I'll make a note of it, but I'm not going to go do more. I'm not going to go write that to my repository. Okay? So when you do it in line, you have to have memory to do that. And you also have to use, in ideal conditions, you will use a layer of SSD so you can look up very quickly those tables. And, with the technology we have now, the price points we have now, it's very, very feasible. Way back when you had target dedupe that was in line, it really mattered to have a ton of memory, because otherwise you'd go to disk and you'd fall apart after a few terabytes because it was just too long to go look up data, a table on disk. So again, inline is very key. It has to happen in memory, or the system has to be designed to have a combination of memory and SSDs. Post-processing, as I said, post-processing is, well, I'm just going to dump it all and deal with it later. And that's the idea. Post-processing is just what it says. I think you're going to get performance out of that, because everything comes through as quickly as possible, and then you just crunch it. Trade-off is you're going to have to pay for that reserved storage space. And by the way, the crunching doesn't happen immediately, so that means you're not really, from a recovery perspective, you're not really done until you're done. So it actually adds to potentially to your recovery exposures. There could be variable block sizes also. So the more granular you are, the more dedupe you can get, because that's kind of the principle here. And of course, it will potentially, depending on how you configure the system, how much data you have, what type of data you have, it will change the configuration you need for your in-memory and your SSDs, so that you optimize for disk reads and understand the performance impact of that. But all of that, by the way, can be easily figured out. As a matter of fact, I will show you a couple of tools we use that are really cool as we when we engage with our own customers to figure this out. So just wanted to point that out. These are trade-offs that, again, are sort of associated with the type of technology, target versus source, global or not, global or by job, or other level of non-global backup. So measurements of dedupe is another one that I want to talk about. Actually, there's a blog I think on our website where I talk about fuzzy math when it comes to dedupe. It's because vendors, and I know I have marketing in my title, so I might be a bit guilty of that at times, but vendors like to do a lot of marketing and create a lot of buzz and come up with great numbers and great ratios for dedupe. But a lot of it is essentially BS, I think, frankly. Look at my blog. You'll see. I'll tell you, the only way to really measure dedupe is very simple. How much source data do you have, and how much do you end up with on disk once it's all said and done? Okay, it's very simple. Anything else is essentially some sort of gimmicky thing, trying to figure out a way to make it look better than it is. If you have, ultimately, in modern dedupe, you want to take that source and you want to shrink it to put it on less storage. That's the ultimate test. And what are those numbers is what you really care about. Now, I'm going to walk you through an example here that talks about, the different ways you can measure dedupe. And really, I mean, I think it explains it. You can do, you can start with a terabyte or almost a terabyte, and then, you add multiple backups. And if you didn't do anything and just added what's changed, the blue parts, for those of you who can see the little blue rectangle on the second one, and then on the third one, you just keep adding those incremental changes. So, your 1,000 gigs becomes 1050, then 11, and then that's great. But now you've got 3 backups, and therefore you've got 3150. Okay, well that's great. It's just that the backup data is requiring that storage is 3x plus what you needed. Now you could dedupe and then just add the additional backup data and you get a much better profile, which is really what this is all about. You know, you're going to be able to take your 400 gig, that's your first backup, then you're only going to pick up what's new. Every backup, you get to 440. Now, the other thing you could do is add compression to that, so or do compression, which allows you to further reduce the amount of storage you need. So there are really a couple of things, and maybe we'll cover that with Mark when we get to the our storage estimator. It's one thing to dedupe and really optimize. The other thing you can do is really optimize also on disk and how you really squeeze the data together once you've done the dedupe. So that's another way to measure it. So anyway, you can get to some pretty significant levels of data reduction when you combine all of the various capabilities here. And one of the things I'd like to do is show you in a minute some examples of what our customers actually get from our dedupe. Because, you know, you're hearing me talk here, okay, here's a guy who's a product guy, but he's got marketing in his title. I'm not sure about that. Well, I'll show you some real customer examples, and then you'll see for yourself, and we can get into the Q&A as well in more detail. Let me talk to you about the architecture of how we do things. I've talked about global source-side dedupe in terms of what it is and how it works. I just want to point out the fact that in our schema, the way we work, the RPS on the left-hand side is really the backup server. That's where all of the heavy lifting happens. We can back up physical or virtual servers. We do extremely well at virtual data protection. As you can see, we got like the top 3 awards at VMworld last year. So we're the top dog when it comes to protecting virtual environments. And we do extremely well in Windows and Linux environments as well. So we can protect all of these sources. We dedupe that. We put it on the RPS. And then let's say you want to do disaster recovery. You have a secondary site, or maybe it's a cloud or provider or partner. We have built-in replication. So we can take that dedupe store and we can send it off to a remote site. Maybe it's to an appliance. We also offer an appliance if you prefer that form factor. If you want to have that one throat to choke, well, that's us. We do an appliance as well. But it's a backup, and by definition, a backup and a dedupe appliance. It's also a replication appliance and a gateway to the cloud. It does all of these things in one. So you can send all of that dedupe to the remote site. And by the way, at the remote site, you could have more servers and more systems. And as long as you're within the same store, it's going to share all of that intelligence between RPS1 and RPS2 and RPS3. You know, we can share all of that intelligence, so you don't have to back up data that you already have in your store. So this is the high-level architecture. There's no real limitation in terms of how many times you replicate or anything like that. There are other solutions out there, especially on the appliance side of things, where you're kind of limited. We can really go, you know, one to many, many to one. We can, you know, replicate data multiple times. There are many things you can do. By definition, this gives you a BCDR solution once you have 2 UDP instances, whether they're appliances or server and appliance. We also have the ability to connect to your favorite public cloud, and you can do lots of things there in terms of file folder copies, recoveries, or more. And we also have a disaster recovery as a service option. So, you know, lots of capabilities. And by the way, all of them leverage dedupe. So the other point I want to make here, obviously, the minute you're going to go over a wide area network, you're going to care about a few things. First of all, is cost. You have the bandwidth, how much does it cost, et cetera. If you're going to take a non-dedupe store and move it around to a secondary site, you kind of want to take a look at the cost. So, excuse me. So having that store already being super efficient and being compressed already, and you'll see some numbers again, that saves you money because you're literally transferring that dedupe store. Okay, and by the way, don't be shy. Ask us questions. Ask the questions in the Q&A section. I'm sure you'll have lots of questions. So if something you know, pops up in your mind, just drop us a quick line, and we'll cover it at the end. One more thing, as I talked about this, dedupe store that's already there, compressed, it's on disk, and you may want to, you can copy that dedupe data across the wire. You don't have to copy the whole dedupe store, okay? That would be, if you were to connect for the first time to a secondary site, you would have to do your initial copy. Well, we offer an option, which is great also for disaster recovery, to take that dedupe store, put it on maybe a portable NAS device or something like that, and literally you ship it and upload it to your remote site. You connect the sites, the RPS servers together, and you resync. And by the way, that one link, it's only going to send whatever is new, okay? So once you have done your backups, it's deduped, you've uploaded and created your remote site, you've done this jump start offline resync, so you haven't sent a bunch of data over the wire at a costly price. You've synced everything up. You're only going to send the updates across the wire. So not only do you send updates between the source and the server, but between those distant servers or recovery point servers, you only send the updates after dedupe has happened and has been really processed. So that's very, very powerful. And again, that's money that's right back in your pocket because you don't have to spend it on bandwidth. We also leverage virtualization. So we do really great at protecting virtual environments, obviously, but we also leverage virtualization for virtual standby, with virtual standby capabilities or instant VMs. So as part of your disaster recovery, you can also leverage virtualization. So that's not the topic today. That's for another day, but something I wanted to just be complete here and cover quickly. All right. So if you don't do dedupe, essentially if you don't use UDP, and this is where we shine, you can get to a very different picture. I'm just going to show you here how Arcserve UDP works. By the way, those numbers, they're not crazy numbers. They're really inspired from real numbers we've seen. And as I said, I promise I'll show you some real numbers in a second. If you do global source side dedupe, you essentially get to the point where your reductions at the end of the day, your data, the reduction that you really get out of the process is minimal. Actually, there's no real reduction. It's a little bit, but it's not that much. So we get to situations where we see customers using other solutions requiring 3, 4, 5, 6 times the amount of storage we need because, after the first pass, we already shrink the data pretty quickly. And then second pass, we typically see very few updates. We're only going to pick up the updates, and we really end up optimizing the backup process. So literally, after you've added all of your nodes, you start the first few backups, you get to stabilize to a pretty good number very quickly. We easily see 75, sometimes more percentage in reduction, data reduction. We've seen in large environments up to 90% or more, and we'll get some, I'm sure, some discussions on that. Just know that this is the point I was trying to make. My source is here 228, 218, 217. My result is 100. Okay, so that has really helped quite a bit. It's less than the source. Unless you can do less than the source, something is wrong, right? You're not really deduping. Ultimately, that's the benefit for you. It's about the storage you use. It's about the efficiency. Also, the ability to move that data around as you need it. Okay, so we're almost 30 minutes into this, and I'm going to switch now to some real-life examples. And I have Mark Johnson, who spends a lot of time in the field. He's with us today, and he'll be helping with some of the questions we're going to get from you and we're getting as we speak. Just wanted to share some real-life examples, and Mark, I'm going to ask you to come in and comment. I just want to point a couple of things. Thank you. These real-life examples are screenshots from our UDP console. We have one part of the console that has reporting and all sorts of capabilities for you to track what's going on, and it really tells you how much data you're protecting, so what is the source, and how much space it's occupying on the disk. So if you look at the top one, there's 83 terabytes, there's deduplication, and then we've done compression on top of that. So overall, we've really squeezed that data to the tune of 70% more, 71%, to the point where our 83 terabytes now occupies 24.2 terabytes. So we will show you an example of the configurator so you understand that your mileage can vary, depends on your retention policy, how much data change you have. Of course, things will change depending on your environment. But the point I'm making is this is what our customers see. They start with 80, they end up with 20. We have couple more examples here that show you a small environment, essentially 20 terabytes into 2 terabytes, 90%, 92%. By the way, that's 92%. Mark, didn't you tell me you saw that same number, but it was not for 20 terabytes, was it?
No, it was roughly 480 terabytes. So they're a
crazy.
highly virtualized environment with lots and lots of smaller VMs. So they're getting roughly 92% reduction in a 480 terabyte environment. So they're very happy. Let's put it that way.
They're probably, I hope they took you to lunch with that money they saved. So that's really cool. And so the point I was making is, don't think that because, actually in our case, I can tell you that because you have, whether you have 20 terabytes, 80, half a petabyte, you can get to those very high numbers. Again, your mileage will vary, depends on the files, the data you have in your environment, how virtualized you are, and the retention policies. But you get a sense for how much storage you can save now, right? And then there's a third example. Actually, if you go on the Arcserve blog, there's another blog I published there that has additional screenshots. I show another example, actually, of a customer that has over half a petabyte, 500 something, that really even optimizes further. I think they only require 13 or 17 terabytes. So you can see that's absolutely fantastic. And again, these are all real. We're not making those up. I'll show you a couple more we got here. These are from our customers, and they send those to us many times spontaneously. You can see here how this came up sometimes on the community. So we love it. Keep sending those our way. So the point I want to make here is that, look, data deduplication, that's global, that's source side, that's the way to go. That's the way to save money. That's the way to optimize your backup window. That's the way to make the ability to copy data to a secondary site, especially when you leverage the jump start capability, to make that very feasible, make it cheaper operationally. We lower your networking traffic. We lower your networking costs. We cut down your storage costs. And by the way, we give you the best award-winning solution there is out there. And the recovery capabilities, which we're not really going to cover today, are pretty crazy. We've got instant bare metal restore for Linux environments. We got literally 9 ways to restore data or systems, including high availability options. So dedupe is really the economic aspects, if you will, but at the end of the day, it's all about recovery. So I just want you to know that in no way does dedupe slow down or affect the ability to recover quickly. As a matter of fact, we've designed it to be super optimized and help us with recovery. So it's easy to turn on, and maybe I'll let you, Mark, cover this slide and the next one that has a configurator. Maybe you can share with the folks here on the phone how easy it is to use with UDP, what you hear from customers, and then the type of work you do in the field, and let me know when you want me to push the slide.
Yeah, no problem. We basically configure deduplication by the data store, right? So it's simply a checkbox that we click to turn it on. One of the things that Christoph might not have mentioned is it's included in the price of the base product, right? We're not charging a premium for deduplication. So you're getting all the economy, all the benefits of reducing your back-end data store without any additional cost to the product. I don't know if you mentioned that, Christoph. I think you did. But
no, I didn't.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. No.
So it's very, very straightforward. We just enable it at the data store level, and all the data that is copied into that data store or backed up into that data store is deduplicated. Obviously, it's going to depend on the nature of your data, but typically I see customers out there, typical customer environment, anywhere from 65 to 80% deduplication, and obviously it depends on the nature of the data, like I said.
So I just moved the slide to show our deduplication planning tool. So it's something we use just to give everyone like a little background on why we did this. Customers tell us all the time, okay, sounds great, but what can I expect? Can we just talk about, set some expectations here? So we have two things. We have this tool, which is a planning tool, and we have another tool that's an actual tool that will exactly calculate, but it has to be deployed in your environment. So we have that for specific deployments in the field when we do them. But let's talk about just at least the planning tool for now, Mark, if you don't mind, and maybe walk us through what we're seeing here.
So what this does is it gives you the ability to plug in some deduplication rates, right? How much, and it'll basically kick out how much disk space you're going to need, memory utilization, so how much RAM am I going to need in that server, or as Christoph mentioned before, the preferable way to do it is how much SSD drive would I need, right? If you look at the bottom where it kicks out the data, right, it shows the raw data, how much actual disk space we're going to use, how much SSD we're going to use, and you can actually see, for example, in the second one there, you can compare to SSD enabled and SSD disabled as far as how much memory you're going to use. And if you look at that, greatly reduce the amount of RAM in that server by putting an SSD drive in there. Plus, the performance is fantastic. So if you look at the other one too, you can look at raw data. Raw data would be how much data are you actually protecting out there in your environment. And what we look at is down at the bottom there is after compression, after deduplication, what am I really going to end up with as far as disk requirements for my back-end disk space. So,
excellent. Well, thank you very much for going through this. And really, when you think about this, this is also a way for us to help some of our customers and partners decide when they buy an appliance, what appliance to purchase, based on there are a couple of other parameters like retention and et cetera. But fundamentally, you get a very good sense of how we've architected this really modern dedupe solution to not only go fast but also shrink data as much as possible and lower costs. One thing I'd like to do real quick because I think it's important to just kind of set the table a little bit here. I just want to compare ourselves to a couple of other vendors out there that will remain nameless, and I'll let you guess who they are. But we're very proud of our dedupe. We believe we have the best dedupe in the market. So I'm just going to leave you with this sort of a view of how others work. When you do a per job dedupe for this company VM, the large block size and the per job dedupe just doesn't work. You have to go back and get a second level of dedupe. Typically, what's recommended is a target dedupe in the case of this vendor. So you end up spending money on the software. The dedupe is not global. It's per job. It doesn't really work. It's actually not even in the product. It leverages, I think, Microsoft's dedupe capabilities. And you have to go buy another piece of hardware to do a target dedupe. So not necessarily a great deal. As I said, look at the money, look at the dollars. You'll see the benefits, I think, immediately. Another company, Company U here, that has kind of this like weird combo of inline and post dedupe and kind of some source side and some partial global, not really global as a matter of fact, very node dependent. So the results you get out of it, you get some dedupe for sure, but it's not global. So that's a big one. You can't really share it. And it comes with less efficiency ultimately than how we do it, and we're at the bottom there. So, we looked at this and we thought, this is definitely a story we want to tell, because as you make decisions about where your money's going to go and what you need to buy, you need to understand the facts. And if you have an unlimited budget, well, first of all, we want to talk to you, but sure, do whatever you want. But very likely you have a very limited budget and you will not be able to spend that much on back-end storage And really, that's why we think we're extremely well positioned here. Again, we're 100% inline, 100% source side. That's really what makes us different and unique. So just to summarize, has to be inline, has to be global, has to be source side, has to work for virtual environments, physical environments, has to be optimized all the way. And, ultimately, it has to be, for dedupe to really be efficient, has to be something that works in combination with other key capabilities associated with disaster recovery, such as replication and the ability to recover quickly. So that's what I had, and I think we have some questions today. So I'll just let Emily take over now and ask us a few questions.
All right, fantastic. Let's see, our first question is from Troy. He would like to know, are the planning tools available for us to download and use?
This is Mark. Yeah, absolutely. There's actually on our website, there's a storage estimator. It's a great tool. They can plug in how much data they want to protect, what their change rate and yearly growth rate is, what size block they want to use for deduplication, and it'll basically, and how many recovery points or what their retention policy is, and it'll kick out numbers at the bottom as to what their disk requirements are going to be. And it'll basically spec out the server too, because it'll tell them how much SSD they're going to need, that type of thing. It's a great tool. It's available to anyone. It's on our website. It's called the Resource Estimator.
Great. Sam would like to know, how quickly can I recover my data if it's been deduped?
That's a good one. Well, it depends on what type of recovery scenario you're looking at, but just the point I want to make is because it's been deduped doesn't actually change anything to the recovery time. We have the ability for you to use an instant VM, to use a virtual standby machine that will be just ready to go with the last backup on it. So it really doesn't affect recovery time at all. And if anything, as I said, it just knows everything about that system, that machine, and will recreate it just the way it was. Or if it's a bare metal restore, and we can support a bare metal restore to dissimilar hardware. So that's another cool feature of UDP. So dedupe has no impact on recovery time at all.
Great. Our next question is from Stephen. He wants to know, does this source side deduplication slow the systems down?
No, yeah, as I said, no, it doesn't. The original, I think, instantiations many years ago may have, but no, we only pick up what's changed on those source systems. It doesn't impact the source nodes at all. We do all of the workload, all of the heavy lifting happens at the recovery point server, so it's a very, very non-intrusive in terms of performance solution for the source nodes.
Great. Let's see. Matt wants to know, you mentioned appliances. Do you mean that Arcserve has a deduplication appliance?
Yes, so let me explain. We have our UDP software originate. Software is also available as an appliance. So because of the way UDP works, when you think about it, of course, it does backup and recovery, kind of like a traditional backup appliance. But because we have built-in global source side dedupe, and again, you don't pay for that separately, and built-in replication, you don't pay for that separately. It's all built in. You essentially, by default, get the combination of a backup software and a deduplication engine. So in a sense, an Arcserve backup appliance actually can and does replace your existing backup software and your target dedupe appliance because you have it all in one. In addition, we have all the connectors to the public cloud. You have an option to go work with the Arcserve Disaster Recovery as a Service Cloud as well. And you essentially have built-in replication. So it's really an all-in-one appliance. But yeah, it's been definitely something that our customers have really enjoyed and giving us some great success in the market. So if you prefer appliances, if you prefer to deploy appliances, or if it's easier for maybe, we see lots of cases where there's a central big server, kind of your main data center, but you have a number of robo sort of locations or subsidiaries, or in a retail environment, you have some stores. Well, maybe an appliance is better there, and you can consolidate everything into one larger appliance or one larger UDP server. So many options.
Great. Our next question is from Rick. He wants to know, are you seeing a lot of people dedupe to the cloud?
So yeah, as I said, for us, we support a number of destinations. So typically, the dedupe will first happen into your on-premise, and then you can leverage a connector to the cloud where you have maybe a standby RPS server. You use our service, and of course that transmission, that incremental, if you will, those incremental updates will be sent up to the RPS in the cloud. So it's definitely picking up. Lots of people leveraging cloud, public, private, or specialty clouds as part of the infrastructure. We fully support it natively. As I said, we first go disk to disk, meaning from your source nodes to either an appliance or a server where you provide the storage. So we're always on premise before we send data off to another location. And by the way, that's probably not a bad thing, because think about it. While cloud is fantastic, if you have to recover a lot of data, and you have that option, it's better to recover from an on-premise store and an on-premise server. Something to think about when you think about recovery scenarios.
All right, let's see. The next question is from David. He wants to know, what's your greatest competitive advantage?
Our competitive advantage is that we're global. So for UDP, overall global source side, that's really what makes us extremely competitive. Built-in replication, we have optimized WAN communications as well, and the fact that our solution really provides this combination of a very unified and easy-to-use platform. In other words, the interface, and you've seen a few screenshots, in addition to having a great dedupe, we're having all of these enterprise class capabilities all in one. It's all unified. It's easy to deploy. The web interface is easy to use. But if you want to be very thorough, you can double click, triple click, and really be very granular with the parameters that you set. But for the non-expert IT user, it's easy to deploy. I tell you one story. When we released our appliance, we also have some wizards to help you deploy quickly. We had a beta customer who said, hey, it took me 40 minutes to get to my first backups, and I spent 20 minutes trying to rack this thing. And I'm like, really? What was our problem? Was it missing a screw? The guy said, oh, well, I'm an operations guy. I'm not an IT guy, and I just didn't know how to put something in a rack. So the get started wizards are very easy to use. So that combination of dedupe, replication, ease of use, many recovery capabilities, and a high availability module, I think these are the 5 big differentiators for us. And of course, you can get it as software or as an appliance.
Great. Our next question is from Scott. He wants to know, what's the status of the live training program, and are the training and videos available for offline viewing?
So we'll get back to you on that. I think there are some on the training program. We have some portal changes going on right now, so I don't want to answer out of turn. So we'll get back to you separately on this one. So we give you an update, and I'm not sure I have all the details handy.
Fantastic. Let's see. I think Scott also wants to know if there's any training documentation available in formats such as PDF or anything along those lines.
Yeah, so there's a ton. I mean, on our website, you definitely have access to the support site. You need to register, and then you have access to all the documentation and everything there. Absolutely.
All right, fantastic. So it looks like we're all out of questions at this time. So thank you so much for that presentation, Christophe. Do you have any final words for our audience?
Well, thank you very much for your time. And again, as you look and evaluate solutions, and really ask yourselves, what's the role of, is there a dedupe in that solution? What type of capabilities am I really getting? What's the net result? And then what are other people saying about it? Remember, the smarter you get with dedupe upfront, the more money you'll save in the back end. And at the end of the day, budgets are finite, and we want to help you save money and also gain in efficiency. So give us a call. You'll see our number here on the screen, and you can just check the website. Go check out the blogs. Again, there are a couple of blogs on dedupe. One, as I said, on the fuzzy mask that some people use. Also, a review of some of the screenshots and the type of results we got from customers. So that's really the best thing I can point people to.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much for that awesome presentation, and hopefully everybody was able to learn a bit more. So just a reminder, if your question wasn't addressed live, or somebody, Christoph said he'd bring it up offline, someone will be able to reach out to you. And if you had to step out or miss any part of this presentation, you'll get an email in just a few days with a link to view the webinar on demand. Special thanks to Arcserve for creating today's content and sponsoring this great event. And thanks to each and every one of you for tuning in today. We hope to see you back soon for another SpiceWorks Partner webinar. But until then, stay safe and keep it spicy.